NHL, your daily podcast on the National Hockey League. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Friday edition of the Locked On NHL podcast. Joe DiBiase from Locked On Sabres and Rachel Donner from Locked On Flyers. I'm fired up. Rachel's the last time we're talking until we have real NHL hockey.
I know, 1 week until the Flyers' first game anyway.
Yes, and I think it's 6 days till the Sabres game. When's the first NHL game? I think we got a Tuesday game, don't we? I think the Seattle Kraken maybe are going to be in action before everybody else. So that'll be fun. That's next week. Yeah, Tuesday night. So we are 5 days away. Penguins Lightning at 7:30, and then Kraken Golden Knights at 10 o'clock. So hockey is almost here. We are going to be previewing the Metropolitan Division today here on the podcast. So stay tuned for some previews for the Islanders, the Rangers, the Hurricanes, the Penguins, the Capitals, the Flyers, the Devils, and the Columbus Blue Jackets. We're going to go through all of that on today's podcast. Quick news item, news segment really to jump off the show, though, here with Carey Price in Montreal voluntarily entering the NHL and NHLPA Player Assistance Program. Rachel, there's not really much we could say about it because we don't really know what's going on. But obviously, you got to be thinking about Price, the human being, over the player right now.
Absolutely. And I think it's really great that it seems like players are more willing to take advantage of this program and take care of themselves, whatever the issue is right now. His wife put a really great post up on Instagram and just appreciating the ability of them to put their family first. And that's really all you can ask for.
Yep. Best wishes to Carey Price as he goes through what he's about to go through. Hopefully he's back on the ice soon. Jake Allen will be on the ice in the meantime as Montreal's starting netminder for the on-ice impact for the time being. And really, we're going to jump right into our Metropolitan Division preview. We're going to go in order of, you might know what the order is if you listen to the podcast enough. Me and Rachel went through some of the over-unders, and me and Mike DiStefano on the Tuesday episode went through the over-unders from Bet Online. Today, the order in which we're going to preview them is an order of which they are the division favorites. And when I read the list to you before we got going here, like, Rachel, you were stunned, I think, by the first couple of teams mentioned, right?
Well, maybe not the first team, but the second team, not exactly thrilled by that.
And we picked up on some trends also with some of our local experts and their previews, right?
Yeah, it was really interesting. I think some of these trends are pretty obvious once you think about them overall, just in sports in general, as teams are growing and changing and on the rise and on the decline. But I think that it really helps distill like what the division is looking like this season overall, with some teams having a youth movement and other teams trying to hold on for dear life and continue to make the playoffs. So the themes that are in these previews from each of the local hosts, first off, I thought was the most interesting is how the core players are going to perform this year. Are they going to lead and step up and really, make the team gel? And the teams that mentioned that most significantly were the Pens, Canes, and Devils, which are in different phases, but all need that to happen, I think. And then, leading off of that, the next major theme was, will the new people gel? There was a lot of teams in this division that made a lot of changes in the offseason. The Canes, my Flyers, for example, and getting new guys to work together quickly to be successful is really important. Yep. The next one is young guys stepping up. A lot of teams made a lot of draft picks and need new guys to take that next step forward. I think the Devils and the Rangers are the most obvious there. Yes. They're the ones at the bottom trying to claw their way up, and they've got all these draft picks they've had the last couple of years. Well, now they have to perform. And then as far as the skill on the ice, special teams performance was mentioned by a lot of hosts as well, where the one downfall that their teams had in the previous seasons was their special teams and maybe not scoring enough power play goals. Even the Islanders, who are atop the division in all these rankings, had special team problems last year. So, we'll get into all that. But And there was one very niche trend, and it's not really a trend, it was more of a coincidence, but a couple of teams in terms of mentioning guys that would potentially stand out this season named ex-Anaheim Ducks. So on the Pens video, we had Danton Heinen was a player that was going to potentially stand out. And for the Caps, Daniel Sprong. And I think both of them are real quality players that were languishing in Anaheim on a team that wasn't going anywhere. And maybe this will give them opportunities to shine.
It's weird that would be the team in the league where, like, all right, like, we got this guy from this team, and it's the Ducks. But I Sprong especially, I've always liked Sprong as a player. I feel like he's been underutilized. He's never gotten, I think, the proper power play time in his career, and I wonder if that'll happen for him this year. All right, well, let's kick things off. Gil Martin, we're going to send it over to him for a preview of the Metropolitan Division favorites at BetOnline at plus 325, the New York Islanders.
Gil Martin of Locked On Islanders here, talking about our Islanders season preview. And the biggest storyline for the Islanders throughout this coming year is going to be whether or not this team can score enough goals to take that next step. Look, the Islanders have reached the conference final in each of the last 2 seasons, but they want to take that last step. And in order to do it, they are going to have to score more goals than they did last year and the year before. They were, 20th, 21st in the league in goals scored. They don't have to be a top 10 team. The Islanders are solid defensively, have 2 great goaltenders, but they need to be in the top half. Get me somewhere between, 16th and 10th at least in the league in goals scored. And then I think that will be the key to the Islanders taking that next step forward. Now, this will be a successful season for the Islanders if they get their power play going, because I think that could hold the key to scoring enough goals. And one thing the Islanders are going to miss, Nick Leddy, who they had to trade for salary cap reasons. He's now a Detroit Red Wing. Nick Leddy was the quarterback of the power play, and Noah Dobson is going to have to take over and provide the Islanders power play with the offense that they need in order to keep it humming. Now, you also have the addition of Anders Lee, who is healthy again. That will make a difference for the Islanders' power play as well. But if the power play can, again, just get into the top half of the league, it should be enough because of the way this team plays defense for them to be successful. This will be an unsuccessful season for the Islanders if they don't get the goal scoring that they need. And, this team is balanced. There is no sniper, but they're balanced. And realistically, there are 20 goal scorers on the top 3 lines. Almost every player on the top 3 lines has either proven to have scored 20 goals in a year or has the potential. I mean, Anders Lee has scored 30 in this league. Matthew Barzal, bona fide 20-goal guy. Kyle Palmieri, he's gotten the job done. Brock Nelson, easily a 20, maybe even a 30-goal player. Josh Bailey, only a 15 to 20-goal guy, but he's also capable of giving you 35, 40, 45 assists over the course of a season. And Anthony Beauvillier can also pot 20. J.G. Pajot can pot 20. Oliver Wahlstrom was on pace for 20 if he would have played a whole 82 games last year, but of course nobody did. And then Zach Parise, while he may not be able to score 20 easily anymore, he's still capable of putting enough pucks in the net. And then your fourth line, Cizikas, Martin, and Clutterbuck, one of the best fourth lines in hockey. So they've got to get balanced scoring, or else this will not be a successful season. As for a relatively unknown player who by the end of the season will probably be more of a household name, there are 2 that come to mind, but I'm going to go with Noah Dobson. Dobson going to step up and take over as quarterback of the power play in the absence of Nick Leddy. He's going to have to play most likely top 4 defense pairing minutes and be the offensive-minded defenseman on this team. He's got a good teammate to learn from in Zdeno Chara, who the Islanders added, which gives them some leadership. So that is definitely a plus. And I think that Dobson, by the end of the season, is going to be a pivotal player who makes a difference for the Islanders. My official prediction for this season, this is going to be the year that the Islanders reach the Stanley Cup final for the first time since 1984. Now, I'm not going to say for sure whether they win the Stanley Cup once they get there, but I think this team is well coached, it's balanced, they have good goaltending, and I think part of it is also that the Islanders play one style of hockey all year round. They play a playoff style of hockey throughout the regular season. And that means when the playoffs arrive, the Islanders don't have a lot of adjustments to make. As a result, I expect that the Islanders reach the Stanley Cup final for the first time in a couple of generations, and it will be a very exciting season as they start their new arena, open their new arena, and a new era of Islanders hockey gets underway. For more, watch me, Gil Martin, on the Locked On Islanders podcast, and you can watch us on YouTube as well. Going to be a great season, Islander fans. Looking forward to it.
All right. Thank you, Gil. Quick minute or two for us on the Islanders. The additions were big names, but guys that I would say are certainly past their prime. Zach Parise, who's been skating on their third line with Jean-Gabriel Pageau and Oliver Wahlstrom, and then Zdeno Chara returning to the Islanders. It's going to look really strange. And he's been skating on the third pair with Scott Mayfield. What did you make of the Islanders offseason, and do you think they deserve to be the division favorites? Slim, but they are the division favorites.
Yes. I think they do deserve it because they didn't lose much. I think they were sort of always planning on losing Jordan Eberle anyway, so they had accounted for that. They lost Nick Leddy, who was replaceable. Andrew Ladd, also replaceable. And I think that, you mentioned the addition of Parise. Having him on a line with JG Pageau, I think will be really successful for them. I think it's a really potentially potent combination there. And that's third line. So that just shows the depth of what this team is putting together. And, Gil mentioned, like I mentioned in the themes of they need to just score more goals. And I think that with this tweaked lineup and the system that Barry Trotz has, they should be able to do that, especially if, Barzal continues to score the way he has in the past and trends up. I think they are poised to do very well this season.
Parise, by the way, it might be very easy to look at his numbers from last year and think that this is really the end for him, and he's 37, so it's going to happen. But 18 points in 45 games to me is not indicative of his play. In fact, his points, because his ice time just tanked. He went from 17 minutes a night the year before and 18:40 the year before that to last year he was playing under 14 minutes a night at 13:57. In fact, his points per 60 minutes of ice time actually went up last season from the previous year. So that's not to say that I think he's going to be the Zach Parise of old. But the 46 points that he had a couple of years ago, I could see him putting up 40-plus points on that line because he's got two quality line mates that can both put the puck in the back of the net. And that's just kind of the Islanders, though, right? Don't they kind of have 3-second lines? That's just kind of how they've built their team. And that, honestly, that works for them. And the Chara move, Chara is so slow at this point, but in a protected role on the third pair, I think they were minor moves, but like you said, the bigger story maybe for them was they hung on to their big guns. Kyle Palmieri, maybe most notably, who's been skating on the top line with Barzal and Anders Lee. You got another word on the Islanders? You want to move on?
No, I think they're the real obvious choice for the first place in the division.
Well, second place, this was the team that Rachel was surprised by. I was definitely surprised by this as well. Plus 400, which is not too far behind the Islanders, who are plus 325, to win the Metropolitan Division, are the New York Rangers. So let's get a preview of them from New York, from Locked On New York Rangers host John Chick.
Hey, what's going on, hockey fans? It's John Chick with Locked On New York Rangers, and we are here to basically do 5 questions in 5 minutes regarding the upcoming season for the Blue Shirts. Not going to waste any time, just going to dive right into it here. What is the single biggest storyline to watch with your team this season? I would say that given the amount of moves they made this offseason to make this team bigger, tougher, stronger, more physical, use whatever adjective you want to use. You guys know what I'm talking about here. The surplus of players they brought in to kind of fit that bill. I mean, you've got Barclay Goodrow, you've got Sammy Blais, you've got Ryan Reeves. You could maybe even throw Patrick Nemeth in there as well. The Rangers really went out of their way to make this a bigger, more physical, tougher team. And now we need to see that manifest itself on the ice. And so far in the preseason, it has. They've been throwing a lot of hits. Sammy Blais is a wrecking ball out there. But I want to see this come to fruition during the regular season. I want to see the Rangers be a team that not only is lacking in the physicality department, but a team that now has the edge in physicality against most of the teams they play. And I think there's a very, very good chance that that could happen. But I think that's the biggest storyline. The Rangers have always had skill, but now they've added some physicality and some toughness to complement that fantastic skill that they have from guys like Mika Zibanejad, Artemi Panarin, et cetera, et cetera. All right, question number 2. This will be a successful season for your team if... I would say it'll be successful for the Rangers if the big 4 can develop. Who are the big 4? That would be Alexis Lafreniere, Capo Caco, Philip Hedl, and Vitaly Kravtsov. All 4 of these guys are homegrown players on the New York Rangers, and all 4 of them were selected in the first round of the NHL draft. I believe Hedl went the latest of any of them, and he was like number 17 overall. The other 3, all top 10 picks. And listen, they've all shown flashes. They've all had their moments over these last couple of seasons here. Of course, Lafreniere was a rookie last season, as was Kravtsov. Kravtsov, we only got a small taste of what he can do. But I think that a lot of the Rangers' success relies on if these guys can kind of take a step forward this year and how many of them can take a big step forward. Can 1 or 2 of them? Can all 4 of them? There's a lot riding on that because, you know, we all know what we're going to get from guys like Artemi Panarin, Mika Zibanejad, Adam Fox, Chris Kreider. I think there's a lot riding on what these young kids can do. So that would make this a successful season if all those players I just mentioned can really kind of grow by leaps and bounds and take a significant step forward this upcoming season. Question number 3. This will be an unsuccessful season for your team if... Yeah, I mean, I don't want to come on here and just say that it'll be unsuccessful if the team suffers a lot of injuries because I think that's pretty much common sense. You could pretty much copy and paste that to any team in any sport, and it would definitely apply. But I will throw out one name as it pertains to injuries, and that is, of course, Igor Shesterkin. Now, Shesterkin, I'm all in on Igor. I think he really is going to be a franchise goalie, the goalie of the future for this New York Ranger team. He played obviously a lot this past season, had a really nice season for himself after getting into a handful of games the season before that. But, you know, he has had at least a little bit of injury problems, and I'm not even counting the one where he was in a car accident because that wasn't his fault. There was nothing he could do. He was wearing his seatbelt and all that good stuff, so that's just bad luck. But Igor Shesterkin is somebody that really needs to stay on the ice for the Rangers, and assuming he does stay on the ice, he's going to be a big-time goal in this league because the Rangers, they are going to be one of the youngest teams, if not the absolute youngest team in the NHL, and something that can really kind of give a team like that a boost is if your goalie has the ability to kind of pick you up. You know, there's a bad turnover or you fail to clear the zone, whatever it might be, the other team gets an A+ scoring opportunity, and Igor or whoever your goalie is can, you know, prevent the team from scoring. I think that's absolutely huge on any team, but certainly a young team like the New York Rangers. So I think the Rangers, it'll be an unsuccessful season if Igor either gets injured or just doesn't play, you know, like a top 10, at least top 12 kind of goalie. You know, he got the big contract extension, so that's what the Rangers are looking for from him. And obviously they have a lot of eggs in the Igor Shesterkin basket. Question number 4. Who is a relatively unknown player on your team that could be a household name by season's end and why? I just talked about him 2 questions ago to be exact, but for me, it's Vitaly Kravtsov. Kravtsov, a first-round pick by the New York Rangers a few seasons ago. He just made his NHL debut this past season, and only skated in 20 games, so we had a very small sample size when it came to Kravtsov. But I liked what I saw. And if you just look at his stats, you're not going to be very impressed by what he did last year. He scored 2 goals and had 2 assists in the 20 games, but he was just getting his feet wet. He was somebody that would kind of move up and down the lineup. I could still kind of see him being in a little bit of a swingman role for this New York Ranger team. But every time this kid had the puck, man, I just felt like he was dangerous. I felt like, you know, something good was going to happen. He was either going to snap off a quick shot or weave around a defenseman, set up one of his teammates, whatever it might be. I really like what I saw from Kravtsov this past season, and I think that, you know, he could be big for this upcoming season. He could be have a little bit of a breakout, especially if he ends up at some point playing on the Artemi Panarin line, which I certainly think is possible. 5th and final question, your official prediction for how your team's season will end. All right, so for the first time in this podcast history, and we are going to season 3 of this podcast, I am officially predicting that the New York Rangers will make the postseason. The last couple of seasons, I've been putting it kind of at 50-50, and I've been kind of qualifying it by saying, if this happens, then the Rangers will be in good shape. But if this happens, they probably won't make the playoffs. This season, I think playoffs 100% a realistic goal, a realistic expectation, especially when you consider all the young players on this team that I just talked about a second ago. If they continue to develop, that could be the kind of thing that kind of pushes them over the edge and gets them above the playoff threshold. I do think it'll be a little bit of a photo finish. I think the Rangers could be one of the wild card teams or just one of the last teams into the postseason in general. And I think that once they get there, I would say they probably, they put up a good fight in the first round, but I think they probably end up losing in the first round to, a tough draw, one of the best one or two teams in the Eastern Conference. I think that's a pretty realistic way as to how it could shake out, but there's a wide range of outcomes when it comes to this New York Ranger team, because they could easily fall short of that expectation that I just set. They might miss the playoffs again, or they could surpass it. Like I said, if some of those young players come along a little bit more than we might be expecting them to, then they could be a dangerous team come playoff time. But that's pretty much it for now, guys. Once again, thank you for listening, and make sure to check out the Locked On New York Ranger podcast and give us a follow on Twitter at LO_NY_Rangers. Once again, this is at LO_NY_Rangers. Thanks, guys.
All right, the New York Rangers at plus 400. Do you want to kind of go into your thought process as to why this is kind of crazy, maybe that they're second for this?
Yeah, I think this team could go one of two ways, but even on the good side of things, I just don't think they have enough experience with the youth to get beyond like what our preview just said, that maybe they'll scrape into the playoffs, but if so, they'll lose in the first round. They just don't have enough solid playoff experience to really get to that next level right now. And, he mentioned the big four having to step up. So Lafreniere, Capo Caco, Filipino, and Vitaly Kravtsov. What are the odds that all four of them do that? Like all four?
Not high.
Not high. And that's the big thing here, is that not all of them are going to be successful. In order for the Rangers to get into this second slot, not only do Panarin and Zibanejad have to continue to have elite level seasons, but all four of these guys have to step up too. Their goaltending is a little bit questionable. I think it's streaky, to be honest. They're solid goaltenders, but they could run into problems because they're both pretty young.
Yeah.
And so I just think this is a bad bet. I'm not taking this bet.
I agree. I didn't like their offseason. They went for toughness, right? Like they added Barclay Goodrow and Ryan Reeves and Sammy Blaze. Reeves won't even be available for them, it looks like, because of that nasty cut that he had on his ankle the other night from a collision in the preseason. But anyways, like that was kind of their mindset, though, was let's not let Tom Wilson push us around. And meanwhile, they didn't really add around their young core for the skilled spots in terms of scoring goals and creating goals. And they're just like, all right, we're just going to hope that Lafreniere and Kako and the guys you mentioned are just going to kind of take that next step forward. And I think that could happen. But as you kind of led into, like, how likely is that to happen? I mean, maybe if two of them kind of come through, if Lafreniere turns into a 30-goal scorer and Kako turns into a 25-goal scorer, is even that enough? Because I do think with that, you'd still have to have the goaltending. And I do love Shesterkin, and I think he's a great young goalie in the league, but they decided already he's worth $5.6 million per year, and he's only played 47 games in the league. I mean, that's a lot to rely on a guy. I hate to bring up your guy Carter Hart over in Philadelphia, but like they kind of had, I feel like, a similar trajectory at the beginning. Like Hart showed up right away, and maybe he wasn't as good as Shesterkin, because Shesterkin had that first 2 months for the Rangers in his rookie year where he was like the best goalie in the league. I'm not sure Hart was that, but they're similar to me in that Hart showed up, he looked great, and 2 years in, it was to me like, all right, this looks like the Flyers starting goalie for a long time. And now last year happens, and it's like, okay, I still think that's probably going to happen, but I'm not sure. And that's, to me, what could happen with Shesterkin. What happens if he takes a big step back this year? He's a young goalie. That can happen. There's a lot of inconsistencies at that position before you turn 25 years old. So I would not bet the Rangers at plus 400. I think they could win the division. It wouldn't be the most stunning thing to happen in the league, but I could also see them finishing in like the bottom three.
Yeah.
So that's our little spiel on the New York Rangers. And they could, I guess, trade for Jack Eichel as well. Not that he would play anytime soon, but maybe some progress happening on that front. But let's continue on with our Metropolitan Division season preview. And let's now go to the Carolina Hurricanes, who are next up at plus 450 to win the Metro. Here is Locked On Hurricanes host Jared Ellis.
Hey there, Caniacs and hockey fans. I'm Jared Ellis, host of Locked On Hurricanes, here with the season preview for the Carolina Hurricanes. And first off, the Carolina Hurricanes do have several big storylines heading into this season, ranging from their new goalie tandem, all the turnover they had over the offseason, and the new faces. Of course, Tony DeAngelo and his situation, Andrei Svechnikov in the first year of his 8-year extension. But I feel the biggest storyline heading into this season is Jesperi Kotkaniemi and how he will fare this season in the Hurricanes lineup. The Hurricanes obviously successfully offer sheeted him this offseason, and they're now paying a little over $6 million this season. So we're going to want to see if that investment will pay off. Second, what is going to be a successful season for the Hurricanes, and what will that take? And honestly, going back to them having so much turnover this offseason after having the same group of guys for so long, I feel if these guys can successfully develop good chemistry on the ice, I think that'll be a key to a successful season. And we've heard some good things coming out of training camp with that, so that's off to a good track. And as far as an unsuccessful season, what that will entail, I think that will be if the top guys don't step up, because heading into this offseason, I thought the Hurricanes were going to sign a good top 6 winger free agent or make a trade for one, and they didn't. They're sticking with their core group of guys, and those guys are going to have to step it up this season because they've been given the keys to the kingdom, and they're going to have to earn it. And someone that I feel will be a household name at the end of the season will be new defenseman Ethan Bear. He had a lot of hype coming in after the trade with Edmonton, and he showed a lot of promise there in Edmonton, and the Hurricanes have a very good track record of developing young talent, and I think he is going to flourish here in Raleigh. And my prediction for how the Hurricane season will end. I think at the end of the day, if all goes right, I think the Hurricanes will finish second or third in the Metropolitan Division. I think their youth is really going to help them this year, whereas teams like Pittsburgh and Washington are getting older. And then their core group of guys like Sebastian Aho, Andrei Svechnikov, Teuvo Teravainen, those guys are tired of getting knocked out in the playoffs. They're sick of it. Sebastian Aho has said it himself. He is sick of it. And when they get to the playoffs, I think they are going to make a deep run for that exact reason. Their competitiveness is really going to carry them, and I think these top guys are really going to step it up this season. I think it would just be a matter if they can get over the hump of the Boston Bruins and the Tampa Bay Lightning. That's my predictions for the Carolina Hurricanes season in 2020-2021.
All right. Thank you, Jared, for our preview of the Carolina Hurricanes. Plus 450. This was the team that I think I said on was with Mike on Tuesday. One recent podcast, I'm not remembering, where I said I would pick the Hurricanes. Oh, we were doing our predictions for the network and filling them out. I picked the Hurricanes to win the Metro. So this was my favorite team coming in. I don't know, Rachel, what do you think the story is about them? Maybe it's goaltending?
That's part of it, I think. I had them in the 3rd spot as well. Obviously not with the Rangers in the 2 slot. I think I had the Caps there. But the thing for me with the Hurricanes is, the goaltending. You're right. I think Freddie Anderson and Ranta are a risky combo to go with, and like starting over with goaltending is always a difficult thing in terms of, learning patterns and being able to play together well. And then they just had so much turnover this season. It's a very mixed roster in terms of a lot of new guys, a lot of established players, and this team is going to take time to come together and figure stuff out for themselves. And so I just don't think they're going to have a particularly good start to the season. Watch me eat those words. But I think they will get it together because they have a lot of really good players. I think it's just going to take them a while to get there. So, I think that it's a real risky season for them. And, what version of Svechnikov is going to show up? Yep. His debut season or the fine but not stellar season he had last year.
Yeah. It's not perfect. Like, they've been this great possession team in past years. They've had this amazing blue line that's been very underrated over past years. And will that hold up? Because now I've got Tony DeAngelo in the defense core. I mean, that's got enough issues on its own without even talking about beyond the ice impact. Ian Cole now is in the picture there. Ethan Bear. Like, is that blue line going to mesh the same way it has in past years? I respected the Jesperi Kotkaniemi move. I loved the offer sheet, but yeah. I wonder if we're overrating that because it was such a big deal that an offer sheet happened in the first place that we're almost maybe overvaluing what the player is. He's a good player, but they got him on the top line skating right now with Vincent Trocheck and Martin Necas. That's listed one. That actually, to me, would be more their second line. Aho, Teravainen, and Svechnikov should be listed as their first. But anyways, Kotkaniemi in their top six. I like the player, but
I don't know that he's that.
No, right. What are we talking about for points for him last year? I know he scored the big goal against Toronto in the playoffs.
And then he got benched. So
5 goals, 15 assists in 56 games.
Yeah.
Expanded role. We'll see. I'm open to him improving in Carolina, but I still like the team up top to bottom. But before I'm super confident in them, I do want to see if Freddie Anderson and Antti Ranta can, 1, play well, and 2, stay healthy, because both guys have had lots of injury issues in the past couple of years. All right, before we get to Pittsburgh, Washington, Philadelphia, New Jersey, and Columbus, we just want to take a timeout here to tell you about Get Upside. My listeners are making up to 25 cents for every gallon of gas every time they fill up. Just download the free Get Upside app in the App Store or Google Play right now and use the promo code HOCKEY for Locked On NHL listeners and get a bonus 25 cents per gallon on your first fill up. That's up to 50 cents cash back. Don't pay full price at the pump anymore. Get cash back using Get Upside. Just download the app for free and use the promo code HOCKEY for Locked On NHL to get up to 50 cents per gallon of gas back on your first tank. Some people who drive a lot are making as much as $200 to $300 a month in cash back, and there's no catch. The cash back gets added right into your account. You can cash out anytime to your bank account, PayPal, or an e-gift card for Amazon or other brands. Just download the free Get Upside app and use the promo code HOCKEY for Locked On NHL.
Hello, I'm Scott Cullen of the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast with a look at the Metropolitan Division. And it appears to be a strong division, especially with improvement at the lower end. Teams at the top, like Carolina and Pittsburgh and Washington, they all face some uncertainty coming into the season due to either off-season losses or some injuries. And then you have the New York Islanders, who have been in the Final Four in back-to-back seasons, so they have high expectations, as will the New York Rangers have high expectations. They've built a strong roster and have a new coach with a chance to kind of steer them into contention. Philadelphia Flyers should still be competitive. The New Jersey Devils made a big move to get defenseman Dougie Hamilton in an effort to kind of close the gap on the top teams in the Metro Division. And then you have the Columbus Blue Jackets, who look like they'll be at the bottom of the pack. But even the Blue Jackets should be relatively competitive compared to the other teams that look like they might be headed for the bottom of their divisions. Now, if there's a player in this division that I have to have for fantasy, it would be Artemi Panarin of the New York Rangers. In the past 2 seasons, Panarin has 1.38 points per game for the Blue Shirts. That puts him behind Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl, and that's it. So he's hanging out in pretty elite company for point production, and he does it as a left winger. So he's putting up that production at a position that doesn't necessarily have a lot of offensive threats. So Artemi Panarin is a great one to have, obviously. A player that I'd be wary about is Columbus's Patrik Laine, and it's not easy to shy away from a player who might have 50-goal upside, but if you look at the underlying numbers for Laine last year in Columbus, they're disastrous, and it's not a matter of he wasn't scoring goals, he wasn't generating shots, he wasn't getting scoring chances, and to a terrible level. And so some of that obviously falls on Laine. At the same time, some of that probably goes to the supporting cast in Columbus, where they don't necessarily have the right puck distributors that can help bring the best out of a pure shooter, and maybe a one-dimensional pure shooter like Patrik Laine. Now, for a player who in this division who I think might have some surprise value, it would be Jack Hughes of the New Jersey Devils. And yes, he was a first overall pick a few years ago, but his first season in the NHL wasn't very strong. Last season, the point production still wasn't great, but his underlying numbers were much better. The play was going in the right direction with Hughes on the ice. He was creating chances. And now the challenge going into his third season is to take all that play driving and chance creation and turn it into actual points. And so it's worth banking on Hughes and his high skill to come into this season and kind of break out with his best NHL production. Now, if there's a team in this division who would be considered loaded for fantasy, now this is a division of a lot of quality teams, so more than other divisions, I would say. But the New York Rangers look like they are maybe the team with the most fantasy value. Not only do they have Artemi Panarin, but you have the reigning Norris Trophy winner in Adam Fox. You have a promising young goaltender in Igor Shesterkin. You've got solid veterans like Chris Kreider and Mika Zibanejad and Ryan Strome. And then you have a few young guys who could be poised to break out. Whether Capo Caco or Alexei Lafreniere, if either one of them does, that really would put the Rangers' fantasy value up over the top. But even if they don't, the high-end guys on that Rangers roster could give you a pretty good return. Now, a team that doesn't have great fantasy value in the Metropolitan Division, that would be the Columbus Blue Jackets. And yet, it's not as though the Blue Jackets are bereft of fantasy value. They have goaltender Elvis Merzlikins is going to be worth a look, as will defenseman Zach Werenski. And then you got forwards Jakub Voracek and Oliver Bjorkstrand and Jack Roslovic and even Patrik Laine at some point are going to be worth your fantasy consideration. So while there are some teams that when you go around the league, you're going to look at their fantasy appeal and there's virtually nothing, even at the bottom end of the Metropolitan Division, the Columbus Blue Jackets still have a little bit of something.
Joe DiBiase, Rachel Donner here on the Locked On NHL podcast. All right, we went through the Islanders, the Rangers, and the Hurricanes. Next up, actually with the same odds, Carolina at plus 450 to win the Metro. Here is Hunter Hodes from Locked On Penguins.
Hey everyone, Hunter Hodes here of the Locked On Penguins podcast to give some of you on the national show a little preview of the Pittsburgh Penguins this season. So in terms of the biggest storyline to watch, it's really just going to come down to how the core plays. This team will only go as far as Sidney Crosby, Evgeny Malkin, and Chris Letang takes them. I could have taken the easy one and said goaltending because, yes, the goaltending is going to play a huge factor as well. Ron Hextall and Brian Burke are taking a very big gamble by bringing back Casey Smith and Tristan Jarry. They're hoping that Andy Chiodo, the new goaltending coach, can bring out the best in their game that we haven't seen before. But in terms of the biggest storyline, how will Sid play after that surgery, and how will Gino play after that very serious knee surgery where he was basically playing on one leg in the Stanley Cup playoffs? And for those that forgot, he was a point-per-game player. So I think that's the biggest storyline. If they are able to carry the load, this team should be a playoff team. So that's what I'm looking for that. I think this will be a successful season for Pittsburgh if, they finish top 3 in the Metro, and if they win a couple playoff rounds. I mean, no one in this city, fans, media, whoever else covers the team and just talks about the team, will think this is a successful season if they bow out in the first round of the playoffs again. They've done that 3 years in a row. 4, that would be unacceptable at this point. I think if that happens, Mike Sullivan has a chance to lose his job, even though I think he's a top 5 coach in hockey personally. but I think it's successful if they are able to get out of the Metropolitan Division, win both of those playoff series, and get to the Final Four. And, if they lose to Tampa Bay or someone else from the Atlantic Division, then you know what, so be it. They still got further than they've gotten since 2017. I think that would be a successful season for Pittsburgh, in my opinion. Unsuccessful, I think that would be if the team misses the playoffs. Again, I don't expect that to happen. They have the longest active playoff streak in the NHL right now. I think it's the second longest all-time behind the Detroit Red Wings, who just kept going on for, 25, 26 years, something like that. But I think that's how it would be for unsuccessful. I don't think the Metropolitan Division is as good as some people say it is, but, if the Rangers take a huge leap, if the Flyers take a huge leap from last year, and Carolina and the Islanders are right there, it's going to be tough for Pittsburgh. They're going to have to play some good hockey while some of their core players are out with an injury. And, in typical Penguins fashion, that probably won't be the only two players who are hurt all year. I mean, this was the team that had the most man games lost last year. At times they were without 4 to 5 of their top 9 forwards, and they somehow still won the East Division. But again, I think this will be unsuccessful if they miss the playoffs, or, if Mike Sullivan was fired during the season. As for a relatively unknown player who could be a household name by the season's end, I'm going to go with Danton Heinen. He signed a 1-year deal from Anaheim to be with the Penguins for this season. He's trying to get back to that level that we saw in 2017-18 when he was almost a 50-point player. And, I know he was playing top 6 minutes. I think he was on the Krejci line. They weren't going to split up the Marchand, Bergeron, Pastrnak line. But he's a good playmaker. He has a nice shot. His skating is pretty crisp. I think that is going to be someone who surprises a lot of people this year. I've seen comparisons that he should be like a Mark Jankowski clone. Don't really see that at all. I definitely disagree with the people who think that and say he's a bum or whatever. So I think you're going to see a big season from Heinen this year. So I'm really excited to see how that goes. I mean, his first preseason game with the team this season was on the ice for 16 shot attempts for 4 shot attempts against for a 90% expected goal share. That comes from, I'll shout this guy out, Danny Shiver-Irving of the Pens blog. Go follow him if you're not doing that already for good Penguins coverage as well. But that is who I see as not a household name that could be really good for this team this year. And then for my official prediction, how the team season will end, they will finish top 3 in the Metro. I have them at second place right now behind the Islanders. I think that's how it's going to go. And then I actually do have them getting to the conference final. I think when this team comes together, and if they get fully healthy, and if Gino's good going into the playoffs and Sid is, and they get at least average goaltending, they can win at least a round or 2. I have them winning 2 if they're fully healthy, and then losing in the conference final. That is what I have for my official season prediction for the Pittsburgh Penguins. Let me know what your season prediction for them is. You can tweet me at Hunter Hodes or the show Twitter, LO_Penguins, and you can follow the Locked On Penguins podcast wherever you get podcasts.
All right, thank you, Hunter. So same odds as Carolina for Pittsburgh. No Crosby for the first week or 2 of the season. No Malkin for the first couple of months of the season. I would imagine that's why their odds are a little bit lower, because when those 2 are healthy, I think they are obviously still a threat to win this division.
They absolutely are. And, Hunter has the same attitude that I do about the Pens, is that somehow they'll make it work and they'll get to the playoffs. And, Hunter said that for them to be successful, they need to get to the second or third round because they've gotten knocked out in the first round 3 years in a row, which, isn't great from what their track record had been prior to that. And I wonder, I just keep wondering, is this the last year they're going to be able to scrape it together the way that they do? And, miraculously, Malkin will be back in top form and Crosby will be back in top form, and that'll carry the team through. I don't know if they can do that this year, even with the players that they've added. Ron Hextall didn't do much with this team. They didn't lose much. I guess losing McCann was significant. They lost Brandon Tanev in the expansion draft, but adding, we talked about Heinen as far as like the Ducks trend, mini trend, but like Brock McGinn was a pretty good pickup, but that's pretty much it.
Yeah.
And so we know what to expect from this team.
I think you're just kind of I think you're just hoping that you don't fall apart before Crosby and Malkin get back. Like, I'm looking at what their opening night lineup is going to look like down the middle. Jeff Carter is skating as their number 1 center.
He's actually been playing pretty well for them. I mean,
he was
not
better. Yeah. After the trade deadline.
Absolutely.
So right. But even still, like, as the number one center, that's a little tough. So yeah, maybe he's better than like the way I said his name there, because he had been struggling in LA for a while. Evan Rodriguez passed him, Teddy Bluger, and then Radim Zahorna is their center group to round it out until Crosby and Malkin get back. I don't really know what they're good at without Crosby and Malkin. Like, I don't think they have a lot of lethal goal scorers up top. Their blue line is not, to me, super deep top to bottom, and I don't really trust the goaltending. Now, again, Crosby might only miss a week, so maybe that's a moot point. But I do this every year with Pittsburgh, where I hate the lineup outside of Crosby and Malkin, and like you said, like how Hunter said it, they just kind of find a way to piece it together. Gensel, by the way, is also day-to-day, but I read that he should be good. It looks like he should be good for the start of the regular season. Next up, the Washington Capitals at plus 575. Here's Locked On Capitals host Tyler Kuhl.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I am Tyler Kuhl, the insider to the insiders, and the new host of the Locked On Capitals podcast here on Locked On Podcast Network, getting you set for the 2021-22 NHL season in the Metropolitan Division that is looking tighter than it ever has before. Why? Well, that's simply because of the fact that, A, there's a lot of youthful talent coming through, and those teams are actually pretty good now. The Washington Capitals, yes, they won the Stanley Cup in 2018, but that was 3 years ago since Ovi was jumping into the fountains there at Caesar's Palace. That was great and all, but unfortunately, it's been a few years and a few more gray hairs have come in his beard and pretty much throughout the entire lineup. The average age of the Capitals is 30 outside their goaltending, of course, but that's going to be something you're going to have to watch out for this season, is how are they going to play against younger teams like the Rangers, the Flyers, the Hurricanes, the big clubs, and even the Islanders, even though they have some old guys on there too. They have a couple of pretty young, good players, Matthew Barzal being one of them, of course. But that said, this is going to be the full 82-game season. Can they do it for as long as they did in the past? That's going to be the big question. They will still be successful, though, on the offensive end. Look at their roster still. They still have Alexander Ovechkin, who's only 165 goals away from breaking Wayne Gretzky's all-time record. It won't happen this year, but there's a good chance it'll happen. Because why, kids? Because he'll sit on that left wing, wind up the stick, saying, "I'm right here, guys," and blast that one-timer every single time. He's been doing it for 16 years, kids. No one has stopped it. No one has found a way to stop it. Everyone sees it coming. Even the guys up in the space station are like, yep, that's happening down there. And guess what? That's how they still can't stop it. They also have Nicholas Backstrom, who will be coming back from injury. It may take a little bit longer than folks would like, but he'll still be there. You still have TJ Oshie. Evgeny Kuznetsov has come into camp with a much better attitude. You got to like the fact that this team's offense will still be there, especially on the back end. John Carlson can shoot the puck, guys. I know he's coming back from a knee injury as well, but this guy can still rip the puck from the point on the power play. The PP is going to be lethal for the Capitals. That's why they'll be successful. On the flip side, though, the defensive end, that's going to be the question. A little bit lighter on defense now with Chara and Brendan Dillon not being there. Also, the young goaltending that they have. Vitek Vanacek had a great year last year with Washington. Was able to take the reins away when Ilya Samsonov had his little issues there, and was doing well for the most part, and then unfortunately just forgot to stretch before game one of the playoffs against Boston. And that's what happened to them, and unfortunately Craig Anderson couldn't save the day. What a surprise. And neither could Ilya Samsonov. Now Vanacek's come back. He's going to be 100% healthy. They got him back from Seattle at the expansion draft. But is the sophomore slump going to be there for him? Same thing with Samsonov. Where is his head at? He had a lot of issues with the COVID list last year. Really couldn't get any consistency going. If he's not up to par, and you don't have either of your goaltenders going at full tilt, that's going to be a huge problem for the Washington Capitals, because if in today's NHL, if you don't have two good goaltenders going at all cylinders, you're going to have some issues winning some hockey games. There is one guy that I'm really interested in seeing, really kind of maybe jumping on board here. That's Daniel Sprong. Daniel Sprong, who came over from the Anaheim Ducks before last season, played in 42 games, 13 goals, 7 assists for 20 points. A rather Cy Young season, if you will, but that was his best year since really becoming a, quote, full-time NHLer. I know, obviously, with a lot of the contracts the Capitals have, it may be a little bit tough for him to get into the lineup, but when he does, he can be a guy that can be a factor. He may not be a top six right away, but he's a guy that can play you tough minutes at the bottom, that can easily make his way up the lineup and maybe show the big guns, if you will, that he can score as well. So with that, this is where the Capitals have to try to find where they are going to end up this season. It's really hard. I already made my picks. I picked the Islanders to win this division, not just because I'm a good friend with Chris King, the play-by-play broadcaster over there, but also because of the fact that they seemingly only got better. And even though they really didn't change much, they added Zach Parise. That's really about it they got, right? And they also added Zdeno Chara. He's a pretty big guy too. But they have that kind of ability. So I don't see the Capitals jumping them. Carolina seemingly wants to be this massive media crying, whatever they want to be down there, but they still have that youthful exuberance that's going to continue to push them further and further up. They just won the Central Division, guys, and that division was not as lopsided as people thought, at least up top. They're going to be a team that's going to be contending. With that said, I think Washington still makes the playoffs, but it's going to be tough for them. I see them finishing third above Philly, the Rangers, and everyone else in this Metropolitan Division. It may be close, but they will get in there for this season. It's going to be fun for the Washington Capitals here this season.
All right, thank you, Tyler. The Capitals, they're getting a little older. I don't know how many more years they have of this, kind of like Pittsburgh. But I think for this year, they're still good. The goalie situation is a little questionable because it's kind of like the Rangers. You got two young guys that you're not sure what you're going to get. But even though, Backstrom's in his mid-30s and Ovechkin's in his mid-30s and even Kuznetsov's almost 30 now, and, of course, John Carlson is in his 30s, none of those guys has really hit that cliff yet. And maybe that happens at some point, but I think for this year, they should still be fine. I think you said you had them second in the division.
I did. And I think it's because I would say, although Backstrom is out, as far as like some of the other guys, they're slightly less injury prone than the Pens are.
Yes.
And I still really love the Mantha pickup from last year. I think that's good for them. And TGA Oshie is still a really great player. They have like some significant depth on their roster.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that is what carries them through, like the veteran depth, that they can just kind of work themselves through any potential situation and find ways to win.
I love the way they fill out their depth too. Like they don't really go for those like big grinders on their third and fourth line. Like they just go speed. Like Connor Sherry, who is super fast up and down the ice, and Carl Hagelin, who has got the speed. They added Sprong, as you mentioned earlier, who's got a lot of foot speed as well. He's been skating more on their second line, actually, with Lars Eller and Anthony Mantha, though recent. But anyways, I like the way they go about their depth. Two great goal scorers on lines 1 and 2 on the left wing with Ovechkin and Mantha. And I think they'll get by with Backstrom being out. With Kuznetsov there, Lars Eller is a competent centerman as well. I think they'll be okay. I think I would have them probably third. I think I had them third in my division. I'd have them as a playoff team. And again, I think I think they're going to hit a wall at some point, similar to what's happened in Chicago, but I don't think that happens this year. All right, let's move on from the Capitals to the Flyers, the Devils, and the Blue Jackets. But before we do that, I want to take a minute to tell you about Bet Online, the number one online sportsbook experts, your number one spot for all the pro and college football action this season as well. And of course, all your home for the best hockey bets that you can get your hands on. With a new updated site and interface, even more odds, props, and contests, Bet Online continues to be the number one source for everything football. If you head to the website or use the mobile device to sign up today, you receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Don't forget, though, to use the promo code LOCKEDON to receive your bonus. From football, basketball, there's a big fight this weekend, in boxing, right to your favorite Vegas casino games. Don't wait to take advantage of all the amazing offers available for the 2021 season. Bet Online, the fastest and easiest way to bet all your favorite sports. Bet Online, where the game starts.
One of my favorite things I get to do here on the Locked On Sports Network is talk about Built Bar, because I always have one with me, whether I'm just on the go or I'm going for a hike. And if you're not familiar, Built Bars are a soft protein bar, but they taste just like a candy bar. And I don't know how they do it, but they have so many amazing flavors to choose from. There's something for everyone, no matter what your tastes are. Some of my personal favorites are the raspberry, the cherry barcia, the strawberry, and the salted caramel. If you're like me and you can't decide between flavors, you can order a mixed box and they'll send you 2 of each flavor. But the best part is that they're healthy. Built Bars are great if you're looking to lose or maintain weight while indulging in that delicious treat. They have 17 or 18 grams of protein, but only 130 to 180 calories per bar. They're low sugar, they're low carb, and if you're on a special diet like keto, these will fit right in. So go to built.com and use the promo code LOCKED15 and you'll get 15% off your next order. That's promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at built.com.
Joe DiBiase and Rachel Donner back here on the Locked On NHL podcast. You can follow us on Twitter. I'm at Sneaky Joe Sports. Rachel is at our Miriam. Let's continue on with our Metropolitan Division preview, and let's get to Rachel as well as Russ Cohen for a season preview for the Philadelphia Flyers.
Hi, it's your Locked On Flyers crew here with our season preview. Russ, take it away.
All right. So what's the biggest single storyline to watch with the Flyers this season? I know some will say it's goaltending. I think it's having all these players gel. I mean, we see Ivan Provorov and Ryan Ellis starting to gel a little bit, but it's preseason and things change when the regular season starts. Rasmus Ristolainen is doing well. All these new defensemen and, Keith Yandel included in front of Carter Hart. Let's see how that goes. There's always some learning, things to learn and always just a bar to clear for that. I think like Nate Thompson will be fine on the penalty kill. I don't think there'll be much to integrate him. Cam Atkinson, we haven't seen him score yet. It'd be nice to see him score. He's having some chances, but I know everybody just when they got him, they were just like, yeah, he's just going to instantly score. But, he didn't do that last year. So he has to prove himself this year. So I think all of these things, you want to see how long it takes for all of it to click. And I think that's an important thing.
It really is. Now, what does a successful season look like for the Flyers this year? From my perspective, I think they need to make the playoffs and win a round. And the reason I say that is because Chuck Fletcher made it abundantly clear what his offseason checklist was in terms of finding that first pairing defenseman, an additional defenseman, a scoring winger, all of those things. And he checked every item off of his list this offseason. And he needs to prove that the choices he made and who he signed or traded for to fill those weaknesses from the past two seasons were the right decisions. And in order to do that, they've got to make the playoffs and they've got to win a round. Otherwise, maybe these weren't the right guys.
And what would it mean for it to be an unsuccessful season, missing the playoffs? Like, I think Chuck Fletcher could survive that only because he did a lot of the things, if not everything, that the head coach Alain Vigneault and his bosses wanted him to do. So he did that. They would look at first the coaches, Vigneault, depending on how it goes down. The assistants, they would be in the most danger. Vigneault wouldn't be completely clear. That would take a little while, I think. And then players, like, do you want Claude Giroux back at that point? If you don't make the playoffs, do you want him back? As an older player, is he still going to be your captain? Would he accept not being captain? Those are big things because he's a prideful guy. So those are some of the things. They started to break apart the core when they got rid of Jake Voracek, but now you have to see, will they go further than that if they don't make the playoffs?
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you there. Now, looking at a relatively unknown player on the team who could be a household name by the end of the season, I'm going to cheat a little bit on this answer and say Oscar Lindblom. And I think, of course, Oscar Lindblom's name is known throughout the league, but it's known because of his cancer diagnosis. And we are so happy that he continues to be cancer-free. But the thing about Oscar is that he's actually a really great hockey player, too. Yeah. And he's going to be known, I think, at the end of this season for his skills on the ice. He's recovered really well. His strength is back to where it was pre-cancer. He's making some amazing plays on the ice this offseason, really smart out there, high hockey IQ, and I think everybody is going to be wowed by his on-ice performance this year.
Can't argue it. So my official prediction for the Flyers this year is I think most likely they're getting in the playoffs. I do think they could be a bubble team just because the Metro is much harder. I do think they go as far as until they have to play the New York Islanders. I still don't think they're going to be up to the task for beating the Islanders. If they don't play the Islanders, that's great. But if not, the Islanders, I think, are still their kryptonite. Just the way that they play, the Trotz way, the physicality, even though they are, the Flyers will be more physical this year, the boring, the way they can just sort of suck the life out of a hockey game and really make it a boring game and frustrating game. I still think that's a bridge too far.
Well, that is not the ideal scenario, but will any of this happen? Russ and I will be here all along the way this season on Locked On Flyers, and we'll see what happens.
All right, Rachel, plus 800.
Yeah.
Yeah. So basically, what really expectation-wise, like, you're feeling okay still since that video? Still feeling the same way?
Well, yes and no. I think that I'm in the same place as most Flyers fans. We are very cynical people. And so this team is either going to blow away our expectations or just be the worst thing you've ever seen on ice. And there's really no in between. That's how we roll. But I think that it's just been a difficult preseason in terms of injuries. I think there's 3 guys that are missing. Kevin Hayes is out with an injury. Wade Allison, we really thought was a lock to make this lineup. And there were a couple other guys. Tanner Lazinski, who's a young guy we thought maybe would have a shot, and he's out for the season. So our opening day roster looks a lot different than we would have said even a month ago at this point. And so I think there's a little bit of doubt in terms of what the current lineup looks like right now, especially at the center position, where the team has been kind of scrambling to try and figure out what the best option is. And sometimes they rotate Claude Giroux into the center role because he can do it, but it's not his ideal role. He's much better on the wing now. So Scott Lawton is taking on that role, but our other centers are Derek Brassard and Nate Thompson, and I don't love that. I gotta be honest. That being said, I'm actually feeling much better about the goaltending. Okay. I think Carter Hart is looking real good and real confident in this preseason. We'll see how that goes going into the regular season, not counting any chickens, but I'm feeling good about it. And Martin Jones, I think, is much more predictable than I thought he would be in terms of letting in that first soft goal. But then, he's going to be mostly okay for the rest of the game, dependent on what the defense does in front of him.
That's what I was going to ask about. How's Martin Jones doing so far? Because he's really your alternative to a goalie who had an .877 save percentage last year. And if it starts out poor again for Hart, what's Jones looking like? But predictable to me sounds like I would think that's maybe a compliment for after that move in the offseason.
Yeah, I think that as long as you know what you're getting with him and can work around it, it's fine. And he's made a whole bunch of really great saves in the preseason so far. The problem is he's had to make those saves because he can't necessarily cover the puck up to stop the run of play.
Right. All right, so the Flyers are plus 800. So there, you know what? Even though we're going in order here of the odds, and it might feel like there's a large gap between the Islanders and the Flyers, there's only a 400 plus 475 difference between the New York Islanders and the Flyers to win the division. And now is where the drop off happens, because we go from plus 800 with the Flyers to plus 1600 with the New Jersey Devils, double the odds to get to the Devils here to win the Metro. So we kick it over now to Trey Matthews for Locked On Devils for a preview on New Jersey.
What's up? This is Trey Matthews of Locked On Devils, and here's my season preview for the New Jersey Devils going into the 2021-2022 season. So what is the biggest storyline to watch with your team this season? I believe the biggest storyline going into this season is, yes, I want to talk about Dougie Hamilton, but I think the bigger picture is just the mix of people like Dougie Hamilton, veteran players who have established themselves in the league, and young guys. So look at a player like Dougie Hamilton, who is trying to win a Norris Trophy, one of the top defensemen in the entire league. And then you got someone like Ty Smith, who won all-rookie team last year. Then you got someone like Jonas Siegenthaler, who's getting a bigger role on this team compared to what he was given for the Washington Capitals during his tenure there. And then you got someone like PK Subban, who is a former Norris Trophy winner. So just look at the mix of old players and new players just coming together to try to take this team to the next level. And it's not just those players. Like, we have someone like Jack Hughes and Nico Hischier. Nico Hischier's the youngest captain in the entire NHL. Jack Hughes is entering his junior year. Then look what Igor Sharangovich is capable of doing. Look what Yanni Kuokkanen is capable of doing. And at the same time, we have someone like Thomas Tatar, who led the Montreal Canadiens in scoring just a couple years ago. And then for the net-minding side of things, we have Mackenzie Blackwood, who's just trying to get settled into the NHL and just trying to, make his name more well-known, because we at New Jersey know what he's capable of doing, but I don't think the rest of the NHL has seen what Mackenzie Blackwood is capable of doing. And we're bringing in Jonathan Bernier to back him up, because Bernier is a former capable starter, and he's also a former Stanley Cup champion. Who he got his championship against is completely irrelevant. But, at the end of the day, Bernier is a former champion, and he can, provide a lot of wisdom towards someone like Mackenzie Blackwood. And that's sort of the role that Corey Crawford was supposed to do last season. I apologize. It's lighting where I'm at, so bear with me. So the biggest storyline going into this season is just the mix of old guys and new guys, and just coming together to just try to make this team great and make us, one of those dark horse teams that can possibly compete for a wild card spot. So this will be a successful season for the Devils if we just mesh together. We got to mesh together, and we got to take advantage of these games that are given to us. As in, we cannot slack on a game here and a game there, because there's really no room for error, because we're not one of the favorites to clinch a playoff spot. We can't be one of those top three teams in the Metropolitan Division and just say we're going to the playoffs. No, we have to rely on, a wild card spot, because right now where our team is at, that's our best case scenario if we're being realistic. Because I would like to say we could be one of those teams that could, get a top three position, but it's most likely not going to happen. So for the Devils, you cannot slack. You cannot, we cannot take any games off. Any of these gimme games, you got to win it. You got to produce, and you got to finish. That's the one thing that we need to establish this season, especially since Jack Hughes has been in the league for a few years now. Nico Hischier has been in the league for a few years now. The key for Jack Hughes is that he needs to make the players around him better. Nico Hischier, he's leading by example, but I need him to be a vocal leader as well, to just mesh this entire team together. And, I expect for Jack Hughes and Nico Hischier to have a big role. I need Ryan Graves to be the X factor that I know he's capable of doing, and work together with Dougie Hamilton to make our defense much better, because that was an area of concern for us last season. The power play, the specialty teams, that's something we need to continuously work on. Pavel Zacha was good in it last season, but I think the key for the New Jersey Devils is just we need to mesh together in order for this to be a successful season, and we got to win these games that are handed to us. Essentially, we cannot blow one. So this is an unsuccessful season if our team, now this is a difficult one, but I'm going to go with specialty teams, because our specialty teams was absolutely god-awful last season. If we don't improve in that area, we have no chance of victory, because that's what shot ourselves in the foot last year. I can't tell you the amount of times where we had a game in the bag to win, and we blew it sky high just because of poor specialty teams, whether we couldn't produce on the power play, whether we failed on the penalty kill. If we do not improve on specialty teams, then it's going to be a completely bad season for us. We're going to be, losing the games that we shouldn't be losing. So, if you're giving teams an opportunity to be on the man-up advantage, and if you're not producing on the man-up advantage on the other side of the coin, then you're really not going to be a successful kind of team. So for the New Jersey Devils, we need to be better in that regard. So who is a relatively unknown player on your team who could be a household name by the season's end, and why? Okay. So this is very interesting because, we're a young team. So we know what Ty Smith is capable of doing. We know what Yanni Kuokkanen is capable of doing. We know what Sharon Govich is capable of doing. We know what Jack Hughes is capable of doing. Nico Hischier, all of them. So I'm going to go with another young guy who is trying to make a name known, and that is Alexander Holtz. And if not Alexander Holtz, Dawson Mercer, because both of them have been producing fairly well during these scrimmages. So I'm going to break the rules. I'm going to pick two players. So Alexander Holtz and Dawson Mercer. If they are given a good enough opportunity on the New Jersey Devils, which I believe they will, then by God, they are going to take the league by storm, because Dawson Mercer in these scrimmages, he's making moves that you can't teach. You just got to know the game inside and out. Alexander Holtz has a killer sniper, and he already has a great relationship with Hughes and Sharon Govich on that top line in their first scrimmage a couple days ago against the Capitals. And then for Dawson Mercer, just, in the last game against the Rangers, he was able to swipe the puck away, went 5-hole after a great move. So Dawson Mercer and Alexander Holtz could take the league by storm if they're given a chance, and if they have that connection that they have with their teammates currently. So your official prediction on how your team's season will end. Okay, if all goes well, if we are healthy, if we are meshing together, and if everything goes right for us in specialty teams, then I expect the New Jersey Devils to be a wild card team. I fairly believe that we can be a dark horse kind of team and just compete for, those final two positions in our respective conference to get to the playoffs. It's going to be very hard for us to get those top three positions, because I'm looking at, the Metropolitan Division, and I'm already picking three teams that are pretty much guaranteed a playoff spot. And, when I'm naming off the first two teams, I'm just like, yeah, the Devils aren't really up to par to these other few teams. So we really need to capitalize on our points. We need to capitalize on our power play. And overall, the main thing for the Devils is that I think if the season goes well for them, and everything goes 100% right, we will be a wild card team. That's my prediction for the New Jersey Devils, and hopefully it comes into fruition.
All right, thank you, Trey, for that preview on New Jersey. A big move, obviously, in the offseason, Rachel, with Dougie Hamilton. They also bring in Ryan Graves from Colorado, who's also been skating on their top pair. To me, though, the question marks about them are more forward-wise. Right? Like they kind of just need young guys to take steps forward. I don't know if they're going to be able to score goals otherwise.
Yeah, I think that's the key here is, are they going to score the goals? Because they were not doing that in the past. And their special teams was also atrocious. Like Trey alluded to, like people knew they could just almost score at will at them on the power play, and their penalty kill was not great. I think Jonathan Bernier is also a question mark in net, especially if Blackwood doesn't perform. So I think this is just a season, and almost like Trey said, this is a season to work stuff out. Yeah. And that there really that's the only expectation this season from them. And I think that's pretty reasonable. And then if they manage to break through somehow, it'll be a nice bonus.
Yeah. And by the way, one thing I've been monitoring, we all love Lindy Ruff here in Buffalo. He is 7th all time in wins. He needs, what am I looking at here? 27 wins to get into the top 5. Although actually Paul Parise is active. So he needs 27 to get into the top 5. He needs 90 to get into the top 5 if Parise jumps in there as well, which is kind of crazy to think that Lindy Ruff could be top 5 all time in wins by a coach. But if he makes it through, he's got to make it through this. That's why I kind of hope it goes well for him, because if he makes it through this season, then he's going to jump Al Arbor. And if he gets through, maybe he needs 2 more after that, maybe a year and a half, then he'll be a top 5 winningest coach of all time. Love Lindy Ruff. I hope it goes well for him, but I wouldn't be betting on them to be a playoff team this year. I don't trust the offense. Jack Hughes would be the guy where I would change my opinion on that if he takes a massive leap forward, but it just hasn't happened yet. All right, now we move on to the final team, and you thought there was a big gap between the Flyers at plus 800 and the Devils at plus 1600. How about the Blue Jackets at plus 8,000 to win the Metropolitan Division? Let's go to Jay Forster for a preview on Columbus.
Hey guys, Jay Foster here, Locked On Blue Jackets, with some season previews or predictions for all of you. So first off, we're going to do the biggest storyline this season with the Blue Jackets, and I think it's not really a surprise to say Patrik Laine is probably the biggest storyline. He did not have a fantastic first season with the Blue Jackets. He said that. I think everyone has said that, at the media, Twitter, etc. But, he wants to be better, and he knows he can be better. And on a team like the Blue Jackets, where we don't have a lot of, pure offensive talent, Patrik Laine is going to be the making or the breaking of this season, I think. If he's good, if he scores 40 goals, he could be the difference between the Blue Jackets contending for a playoff spot or finishing at the bottom of the division again. That's the impact he could have. It's going to be a successful season for the team if Laine manages to redo his scoring touch that we know he has. But the other thing I think is goalies. If we manage to get Elvis Merzlikins back to the level that we know he can be at, then it's going to be a successful season. Likewise, Jonas Korpisalo, it's kind of up in the air at the minute. If he sticks around and has a good season, then I think it's going to be a success. If we manage to flip him at the deadline or whenever, then I think that could be considered a success as well, but I think the success of the team lies in players like Laine and Merzlikins. So, likewise, it's going to be an unsuccessful season if the Blue Jackets do what they usually do, or what they used to do anyway, is they were extremely mediocre for most of the season, and then they managed to go on a run, usually mid-March, finish really strong, and that would usually bump them up the table and also bump up their chances of not picking in the top 5. Obviously, we did not do that this season. We drafted 5th overall, and this feels like the perfect season to really, quote-unquote, tank and manage to get a potential franchise player in a guy like Shane Wright. So if the Blue Jackets do the thing where they miss the playoffs and don't pick in the top 5, I think it's going to be a not great season. But honestly, this team could do either of those things. A relatively unknown player on my team who could be a household name by season's end is Gregory Hoffman, who I think most people are vaguely aware of him. He led the World Championships in scoring this past summer. He was a 4th-round draft pick of the Carolina Hurricanes. We traded for him. I believe we traded a 7th-round pick for him. And he's a guy that I think could be a sneaky good player. He feels like a guy that could just kind of take over and do. I don't think he's going to be the next Kirill Kaprizov or Artemi Panarin, but he could just turn up and be like, right, I'm going to score 20 goals this season. And that would be, if we can get, more than one guy to score 20 goals this season, I think that could be great. So Hoffman is my pick for relatively unknown player, could be a household name at season's end. He could just take off. That's what we're hoping. I'm going to finish up my official prediction of how my team's season is going to end. It's tough because, and I've talked about it on the podcast before, the Blue Jackets are a team that could either contend for the playoffs and, be a threat, or they could be at the bottom of the league. And there's really no predicting which one they're going to be until, halfway through the season. But my prediction is that the Blue Jackets are going to be bad this season. I think they're going to finish bottom of the Metropolitan. I don't think they're going to be as bad as everyone is saying that they're going to be, but I don't think they're not going to be good, or they're not going to be consistently good. I think we're going to have good individual players. I don't think we're going to win a lot of games. There's going to be a lot of 4-3 losses in our future, I think. If you'd like to hear more from me about the Blue Jacket, about anything in general, you can follow me on Twitter at _Jacob Foster, JAKOBFORSTER. You can find this podcast on Twitter at LO_Blue Jacket. You can also find us wherever you get your podcast, Apple, Spotify, Stitcher, Podbean, Odyssey. If you have a podcast app of choice, you can find us there. And if you have comments, questions, criticisms, you can email me at lockedonbluejackets@gmail.com. I'm excited for the season to start. Hope all of you are as well.
All right, thank you, Jay. Rachel, do the Blue Jackets deserve the do they deserve the odds they got? Do they deserve to be not even an afterthought, like I would maybe describe New Jersey, but like BetOnline's telling us there's no chance in hell almost that they're winning this division?
Absolutely. I mean, they lost some really key players, Seth Jones. I think, losing Cam Atkinson is not great for them, but they got Jake Voracek in return. Obviously, I have a soft spot for him. But in the preseason, Jake Voracek has been referred to, I think by Jay, as the Patrick Laine whisperer, that somehow Voracek's skills at feeding people the puck is going to boost Laine's game. And that could add some additional scoring. But is the rest of the team enough to make them win more games? Probably not.
Yeah, I don't think so either. I think the blue line is very thin after you get past that top pair of Zach Werenski and Adam Boquist.
Jake Bean is like an acquisition. I mean, he's fine, but
It's fine. I like the goalies. I like Elvis Merzlikins and Jonas Korpisalo, but they're not the type of goalies I think can carry a team through an entire season. I like the Voracek Laine pairing. I think they obviously did that on purpose, that they're looking for a way to make Laine work, because it wasn't going well last year. He wasn't producing. He was getting into it a little bit with John Tortorella. There were rumors like a week after they traded him that he maybe wanted out, and he's got the contract status up in the air. So I think Voracek was a move to, we're going to make this work with Patrick Laine. It was a big acquisition for us. We know he's capable of 40-plus goals. Like, let's make that happen. And I think that's probably what they were looking for when they acquired Voracek. I like Oliver Bjorkstrand on their second line as well, but like that's kind of the end of my list for like the young pieces on their team that I really like. I don't even know what they're really trying to do. Are they trying to win? Because as I mentioned, Voracek fits for Laine, but does that fit for their timeline? I guess because he's an older veteran, that would signal to me that they are trying to win again this year, I guess. I don't really know what their motivation is. I don't think they're rebuilding, but I also don't think they have the roster to where they should think they can make the playoffs. So the Blue Jackets, I think, deserve to be at the bottom here. They're not going to be the worst team in the league, in my opinion, but I think they'll be bottom 10 at least, if not bottom 5. All right, well, that's going to do it for our Metropolitan season preview. If you want to check out previews for the Pacific, the Central, or the Atlantic Division, be sure to check out our previous episodes from this week here on the Locked On NHL podcast. And the next time me and Rachel talk to you, we will have actual regular season hockey games to talk about. So we will talk to you next Friday here on the Locked On NHL podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.